I believe that in the next 30 years that we will develop both the technology to communicate around things such as PTSD and the science to heal it. Whether that science is a special combination of actions and emotions and behaviors, or there's a lot of experiment going on around healthy gene splicing, where you clip out the disease in a gene and send it back in the body. I don't know how it will happen, but the accelerating pace of learning and technology is on such an exponential curve that we're going to see rapid changes in a number of areas, and certainly human health is among them. And I believe we're also going to start healing the chauvinistic bias against emotion primarily. There's also a bias against thought, but that we're going to start looking at human beings as whole people, meaning having a mental body, a mental ecology, an emotional body, an emotional ecology, a physical body, a physical ecology, and that we're going to see the ways that those tie in together. However, I think the real opportunity here, while this diagnosis, while the science lags for so many people, and even in the diagnosis to a point where I just feel very lucky the way I serendipitously stumbled into the awareness that I had PTSD. Human kindness and emotional empathy is a technology in and of itself that is profoundly underrated and profoundly important at this stage, where we have a noticeable percentage of the population having dissociative anxiety, panic, shame, depression. Sometimes there's a nice, neat correlation between what's going on in the outer reality and the inner reality. But I actually want to present a hypothesis around this, because I believe that the fear of the unknown and the fear of feeling or appearing crazy is so strong that sometimes when, in this case, we've got a locked, frozen, high state of emotion and panic and dread in the brain from a frozen memory, because the part of the brain around time, etc., is shut down. I believe that we actually sometimes generate problems that would justify those feelings so that we don't feel crazy. And I noticed this in myself around my addiction to being on the edge. And here's what I mean. I started out my business making $7 an hour. And I had watched my income grow to an average of $300 an hour. And yet I was still managing to concoct a weekly ritual of not having enough money in the bank. And so, basically I would make all this money and I'd just go and spend just enough that I'd have this big adrenal race to get the check in the bank, and hurry up and do this so I can do this. And so I would say that just by making sure that I spent more than I earned, I was able to live like in this cliffhanger thing of being right on the wire for like a decade, and logically on some level I'm saying, of course this is a joke, I'm creating all of this. But on another level, I'm rationally saying, oh, no, I need all these things. But one day I said, stop. This is a joke. I am not going to spend another dime until I have a comfortable savings buffer. And I didn't. I had all these there's all this panicky withdrawal symptoms. And it was miserable. It was like going off heroin. Absolutely miserable. And then, 2 months later, I broke the misery cycle. It kind of gave up. The addiction was broken. The whole drama of every week was broken. And I was very comfortably able to maintain a savings cushions from that point forward and actually grow it to a point where I could have roughly 6 months of living. And there's just no way to get all panicky that, in 6 months I might not. So, of course, I have no basis for all that last residue of panic. But the anxiety, the fear, the dread did not dissipate. Instead, it became more apparent because it didn't have a home in the weekly drama. So it's kind of as if you've got a villain, let's say you've got a villain, murderer, actor, they're dressed up in the murderer costume. And the writers in the back room of the TV series finally agree, let's just let these people have a happy life, for goodness sakes. Do we really need to have another one murdered this week? And so they just start writing good lines. But now the actor was hired to do the murder stuff doesn't really have much to do. And if they wander around and come in, it's like, what are you doing here? It doesn't really add up. And I'd say the same is with trauma feelings stuck in the brain. When you're writing the reality script in a way that there's all this drama, it makes sense. But when you change the script, when you rewrite it and there's no basis for all that panic, then the panic that remains starts to feel crazy, because what's really happening is I'm having to acknowledge that it was never really about most of the present, that it's been there since childhood when certain things happened that elicited and froze it, and that I just feel uncomfortable when nothing's going on to justify it. And so I'll create some little altercation of some sort so that I feel sane, so that I can mask this ever-present visitor. That being a little bit of a side tangent, I want to go back to the opportunity that this situation, this condition of people having nightmarish emotional experiences that do not have to do with the present in many cases, but that often do parallel with the present, either because the nightmare is so intense that it's hard to function in the reality, and so the reality outside goes downhill and matches close to the level of the nightmare. or it's so uncomfortable having a nightmare inner reality while the outer reality is beautiful, that we just create some excuse for the nightmare in our daily week, like I did with just spending right up to the edge or a little beyond whatever I made, regardless of how much it was, just so I could have that battle. But also it was always fun at the other end, like, oh, I made it, I got the check in the bank. So I'd have these little dramas, 2 or 3 times a week when I would always be victorious. I'd go out and find the work to make the money, to make the deposit, and it's like little victories. But I was, of course, creating the crisis to begin with in all manner of ways. Focusing in on kindness again. I can't overemphasize how important it is in responding to the disorientation, to the loneliness, to the panic about not understanding the panic, to the dread of not knowing when the next pain or loneliness will just hit, because it doesn't seem to have that much to do with the present reality. Human kindness can heal this state about 80%, meaning it may be another 20, 30 years before we as a population have the skill to first not trigger each other into traumatic states, to second, heal the trauma in some way, thirdly, understand it and also be able to detect it medically in the body and just say, this person is 6 out of 10 in PTSD. And this is the best, treatment paradigm to do it, and we'll know results within this period of time, and this person will be out of hell. And I want to ask you also to consider, if every day you felt the experience of being burned in a fire, but you were actually on a tropical island in 5-star hotels, enjoying life, living the life, or you, were just had a very basic existence in a tribe, hunting and gathering food, or working at McDonald's and living in a small apartment and public transport, and a very basic reality that doesn't seem super cool, but you had no internal guilt, terror, pain, trauma, panic, dread, shame. Which reality would you choose? And I don't know what you would choose, but I do know that anyone who was able to flip the switch back and forth would choose the basic, most rustic life, a shepherd 2,000 years ago, over modern life at peak luxury in a traumatic state. I think the implications of this are big, because as a country, we are obsessed with forward momentum on a purely materialistic level. And this obsession is so strong that it obscures the mental, emotional reality on many levels for many people. I'm a contractor, and I watch adrenal-fatigued, rich clients with strained marriages who register various forms of confusion and stress and sometimes hell on their faces, order a new landscape renovation that is completely unnecessary. Nothing wrong with the existing garden. It's not top-notch, who cares? And then I watch their drama around it. Oh, we got to do this and got to do that, and we can't slow down this, and packing this stuff into their lives. And I'm wanting them to stop, and sometimes I'll tell them, I think you would be much better, scrap this whole process, take a month of vacation and spend a third of the money on a month of vacation and just be together. And they'll often smile. Oh, that's a nice thought. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be cute if we lived in a world where people and feelings and stuff mattered? But, I'm a real person, and I've got to, spend all this money and ruin your life with contractors in your house for another 2 months. I'm not sure quite what the algorithm is, but we're going to do this. And I get a few points for being a contractor, advocating against doing a contracting project, if I don't feel it's going to bring more well-being than something else they could be doing with the time, energy, and money. But the programming is so strong that our government and our R&D and all of this, it's all focused out there. We've got to get more Americans from the point from mica countertops to granite countertops, from renting to homeowning, to this and to that, without saying we have to get more Americans from feeling depressed, crazy, panic, guilt, ugly, shamed, lonely, in pain, feeling welcome, feeling connected, feeling understood, feeling accepted, feeling blessed, feeling loved by other people and by whatever higher power they're able to connect and relate to. We need to get more Americans, more people on the planet to have that place. Because when we have that place, we are human. We are not psychopaths lost in a delusion of dread that if I don't get this and that, I'm going to be all alone and all this, so I'm going to bully and push past you. We are human beings who are generous, who are sensitive, who care. It's human nature to care. When you heal this trauma, when you heal this adrenaline addiction, when you heal the mania, and when you heal the sickness that says your value as a human being depends on how much you did and created, and not on the presence and the joy and the care and the safety that you brought to the people around you. I believe that the message and the burden of roughly 25% and growing of adults experiencing mental illness, and that's just the ones that are being clinically diagnosed. The amount of us that you can say are sick in terms of, getting lost in fear delusions and hurting someone we care about when it was a complete delusion. Getting lost in shame and addicting ourselves to numb it out. Getting getting so dissociated and out of touch that we want to self-mutilate in some way to feel connected. it's huge. It's very hard to find any pocket where it's not happening. In the military, there's spikes of military parents starving, beating, hurting their children, and killing them because they're in PTSD or dissociative states. There's people getting lost in the addiction of video games and virtual reality and neglecting their children. There's people neglecting themselves. More than 100,000 medical professionals in the US are abusing narcotics to cope with the pressures and the stresses of unkindness, of a lack of understanding, of the rigidity of the law and of the protocol, rather than the humanity that's there, to follow that thread, to say that this person is in a place where an extra 20 minutes of talking with them makes the difference. It may save their life in suicide, and so we're all going to understand and we're going to do that rather than cut off the appointment at 15 minutes. And here's a military veteran who's got agony all over their face. They're numbing it by reading every book in the library, but we can go and hold their hand or talk to them and learn about what it's like to give everything for your country and then find yourself ignored in a state that you don't understand, but that you feel deep shame around. This is not a medical issue. It's an issue of human dignity, of human kindness, of caring, and on this level, we can each do something about it immediately. We can be kind, we can listen, we can be kind to ourselves. We can start a conversation around this. And I'll leave you with that thought.